All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Oliver Mood. I'm one of the co-founders of the Whisky List, and thank you for joining tonight's Spirit Thief tasting. This is our very first tasting of 2021 this year. So, we've started with six wonderful samples of amazing whiskies, both locally produced here in Tassie. There's one New Zealand, and unfortunately, there was one more whiskey that's coming from Scotland, but it didn't arrive in time. So we've replaced it with another sample. That's a work in progress tonight. But yeah, we'll get through all those whiskies. Just a couple of housekeeping. So we're drinking cask strength whiskey. So don't drink and drive. It's always important to to be safe there. Drink lots of water as well. There's no right or wrong way to drink whiskey. So if you finding some of the whiskeys tonight a little bit strong, it's always good to have a little glass of water next to you, and you can add a couple drops as you go to kind of reduce that alcohol content and find the flavor that balances on your palate. If there's any questions, I've muted everyone just to kind of keep the background noise down for now. But yeah, if anyone wants to ask any questions, just put it into the chat and we'll interrupt Brett here mid talking to ask your question on your behalf. Otherwise, towards the end we'll as Chris says, drink it however you like. But no judgment here. I think that's it. We do have some whiskies that are specially, like, they're meant to be on pre-sale tomorrow, but they'll be available to buy tonight, pretty much straight after this tasting. So towards the end of the tasting, if we'll aim to about 50 minutes today's session, I'll put some links in to where you can buy the bottles tonight, and we'll go through them as well at the end of the tasting, but we'll reserve that then. I think it's time to kick it off. So this is Brett Steele, founder of Spirit Thief. They're based down in Tassie. I'll hand it over to Brett. But Brett, maybe we should kick off with the first whiskey.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ollie. Fantastic to see everyone tonight. I can see some great collections of whiskey in some people's videos. Corey, I'm looking at yours there as well, mate. And it's quite a selection behind you. All right. Yeah, so let's start with whiskey number one, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about how the company was founded and what it is that we're trying to do here at Spirit Thief. But the first whiskey that we're going to try tonight is our French Oak Pinot Noir American Oak Bourbon Cask from the New Zealand Whisky Co. So if you've all got that as your first sample, we'll make sure that we're all tasting the same whiskey at the same time. So please have a nose of this. This is actually about 5.5 years of age, this whiskey. It was a fantastic collaboration that we got to do with the guys, some of the founders from New Zealand Whisky Co. So some of the names may be familiar to you, with Greg Ramsey and Troy Truan, that are based here in Tasmania. And Greg's known for having brought New Zealand Whisky Company together around Willowbank casks. They've got some 30-year-old whiskies there along the way. But going back to about 2014, they actually started commissioning some new make spirit out of a small little distillery in Christchurch called Whisky Workshops, and doing small cask batches with New Zealand wine casks. And so we had a chance to look at about 14 different casks here and choose 7 in total. 6 of those were a New Zealand Pinot Noir from the South Island, and 1 was the American Oak Bourbon maturation. So bringing this together, this became our first marriage. So cheers if you haven't had a chance to try this one yet. We're really excited with how this came about. It was settled here in Tasmania and married together over the space of about 8 months, just down where we are now in the bond stores. So this is only at 48%. We're starting a little bit lower here along the way, guys, but a lot of creme caramel and vanillins, what I tend to think of as cherry tart in this particular whiskey, and some floral notes as well. And I tend to get a little bit of these spices and sugar on the finish. So if you haven't had a chance to taste this yet, please do. It's a lovely dram, and essentially our first one that kicks off our exploration series here as well. So Sanjivar.
Cheers, mate. This is Such an inviting nose for the first whiskey.
Yeah. Well, it's a really lovely one to get us started with. We will build up towards some more cask strength along the way as we get going. But guys, as you're sipping on that, I want to give you a bit of background. Some of you may be familiar with Spirit Thief. Some of you may have only just heard about us through the whiskey list. So forgive me if I'm covering some ground that's already known. But I originally come from just outside McLaren Vale in South Australia. And I grew up really around the wine regions down there. My grandfather worked for Hardy's Winery for about 40 odd years. And so all of my Easters and Christmases were surrounded by these heavy reds, Shiraz and Cabernet. I worked as a cellar hand up in Renmark at Renmano Winery for a little while. And that was really my introduction to viticulture and getting involved. It wasn't until I went across to Scotland and over to the UK that I really started taking an interest in single malt whiskey from about 2004 was when I was introduced. And my first engagement was a 10-year-old Ardbeg, which was really, the introductory open door for me out of wine and into single malt. So over the years, I've progressively been involved with the industry. When I moved to Tasmania in 2014, I originally started up Tasmanian whiskey tours. At the time, we only had about 6 distilleries that actually had produce out in Tasmania at the time. It was pre-Belgrove having released any matured stock along the way. So it was a real privilege for me from about 2014 onwards for 5, nearly 6 years to take guests around the state from all over Australia, but internationally as well, to the different distilleries and see how the industry was growing, not only in Australia, but specific to Tasmania around not only whiskey, but gin and the other white products that have really come on there as well. So I've probably taken a couple of thousand people around to Tasmanian distilleries over the years. And in 2015, myself and 2 of the guys in the Tassie whiskey industry that some of you may be familiar with, Jared Brown and Ian Reid, we were at Lark at the end of a day's tour, having some whiskies. And at the time, we were inspired by this idea of what could we do with Tasmanian new make spirit to be aging in ex-red wine casks. And in particular, we landed on American Oak Shiraz and French Oak Tempranillo. Everything around us at the time was being matured in either fortified port casks and sherry casks and some bourbon as well. And so we were really keen to see what could we learn from the wine industry and marry that up with single malt. So a friend of ours, Dean Jackson, who was working at the Redlands distillery, which is now defunct, basically allowed us to make some new make spirit to our spec for wine casks. We tried a few different yeasts, and we basically laid down 6 20-litre casks, 3 of which were American Oak Shiraz and 3 were French Oak Tempranillo. And that became the start of the Spirit Thief journey that was only ever really meant to be for friends and family and industry and possibly a few tour guests along the way. But what ended up happening is that in 2018, when we released it, it was received really well. We'd specifically chosen to char and toast those casks to get a fully integrated spirit happening with our whiskies, rather than using just wet casks at the time, or wet fill. And so that was really the birth of Spirit Thief, and what was supposed to be a passion project ended up eventually becoming a business. And this exploration series is our independent version of that. So this here, if I can hold this up to the screen, was what the first original bottles looked like back in 2018. We only had about 220 odd bottles total. The red one here was the American Oak Shiraz. and we had a green one as the French Oak Temp. But that was really the start of our journey.
So I think just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So independent bottling, that's kind of what you're doing at the moment now. Do you want to give a quick overview of what that means for those who aren't familiar?
Yes, absolutely. So independent bottling basically means working with other distilleries in a number of ways that are already established. So you can buy matured stock where they often have different casks that might be maturing in a bond store that aren't necessarily going to fit their usual remit and their outputs for bottles, bottling at cask strength. Or you can basically request to purchase new make spirit and put them in your own casks, which we were keen on doing. Or the next step is to actually work with those distilleries in-house and almost gypsy distill. So using their equipment, we did some collaborations, which we'll talk about in more detail here with some of these other Tassie distilleries, where we could go into those distilleries themselves and get more hands-on and have a more direct input as to the types of whiskies we were trying to make that were different from their regular releases themselves, if that makes sense. So I was asked the other day in one of the media sessions how many independent bottlers there are now in Tasmania and Australia. Well, when we started in 2015, it was only a handful, the most famous of which was Tim Duckett for Hartwood Distillery. He started way back in the early days with Lark, and I'm sure there's Hartwood fans amongst us that love the big, heavy cask strength.
I can see some Hartwoods in Corey's background there.
Yep, yeah. And Tim's second sort of releases on those became TIB, the Tasmanian Independent Bottlers, for a little less strength behind those. Tim's actually based only 200 meters up the road from us. So it's a fantastic exchange that we have. We go up and see him and he comes down and gives some input on what we're doing here as well. So that's been great. Alex Moores, who runs Dark Valley, is an independent bottler, is on our tasting panel as well. He's based in Melbourne. I can see maybe someone's raising their hand there around Dark Valley. And of course, independent bottling internationally has been huge in other countries in Scotland for quite a while. So Scotch Malt Whisky Society is a really popular one here as well.
Yeah, awesome.
That's a bit of an overview. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get people pouring whiskey number 2 and we'll get through some of these comments that have come in. So whiskey number 2 is the Sheen French Oak. So pour that into your glasses and let's just go through those comments. So Tom says, very nice, would drink again. Justin Whiskey in Isolation says, I like that you can just pick up both the bourbon and the Pinot cask influences, and Nadia agrees there's a good mix there and bourbony nose of a wine twist. I think
that's an interesting one there, because it was really a question for us, how many bourbon do we want to use? And primarily the aim was to highlight what the wine casks can do. So it's only about 12% in it is bourbon, but it gives a nice backbone to it as we go. Yeah.
Awesome. Scott Go asks, how many Tassie distilleries do you import or work with now as an independent bottler?
Yeah, so far as part of this release, we've had originally we had Redlands Distillery, Sheen, which we're going to try now, Adams, and Belgrove. So 4, and then all the stocks you can see here behind me, which we'll come to, which we're sort of gypsy distilling here now in Huntingfield, makes 5 basically.
Yeah, awesome. Tim and Courtney saying, love the French Oak. Tried it at Tassie in 2018. Gutted, couldn't get it hands on a bottle. Yeah, all sold out now, right?
Mid-year, Tim and Courtney, we'll have French Oak Tempranillo coming back on in mid 2021. So yeah, it sold out quickly, but it inspired us to definitely lay down some more as part of our core releases for the future.
Awesome. Chris goes, great start. Zach goes, love the new bottles of the token emblem. So those at home who haven't seen it, where's my camera? You can see here, brand new bottles, different labels have different coloring, but you've got this wonderful sort of token, and there it is in sort of the kit there. So you got the little Spirit Thief Do you actually have the Spirit Thief next to you? For those at home,
I reckon, Ollie, let's get on to the Sheen, and then
let's do it.
Spirit Thief. Guys, so yeah, as was mentioned, the French Oak Grenache Sheen Double Distilled. So this is the second one. It's slightly higher ABV. It's 55.4. Now, when we got to do this project with David and the team out at Sheen, at the time they were only doing triple distilled. So some of you may be familiar with the Mackey's whiskey. It's a beautiful triple distilled Tasmanian whiskey, primarily only being aged in port casks at the time. So we said to David, could we do a double distillation? So this is a double distillation, the first double distilled to come out of this distillery. And the Grenache cask was a chance for us to explore what's the difference between the French Oak Tempranillo that we did and the French Oak Grenache, and really start to explore not only oak but wine varietals in the way that is treated in the cask. So please, if you haven't already, pour and have a nose of this. This is a very different end of the scale. This is 2.5 years of age, 6 20-litre casks that have all been French Oak Grenache that were basically married together in one vatting. Okay, so about 250 bottles in total of this whiskey.
Nadia asks, do you know if brewer's yeast was used in it? It's got quite an unusual sort of scent to it. And Dieter says shisho, I don't know how to pronounce it, leaf notes on the tongue.
Yeah. The answer to that question is no. So they were only using M1 distillers yeast out at Sheen at the time in 2018. Using brewer's yeast is something that we do now, and I'll talk about that in more detail with our next tasting as well. But this one is actually just an M1 straight distiller's yeast. But it's a lovely perfumed aromatic style. We wanted to give it a little bit of boost there with the ABV up to 55%. Some of you may be able to pick up the white pepper on the end of this nose here as well. This has become our most popular release so far amongst bartenders, and it's a different style. No bourbon in this, just to be clear. It's all out on this French Oak Grenache. Smells amazing. Yeah, this is thanks, Nigel. This is one whiskey that you can just nose for that perfume aromatics. There's a really lovely balance to this whiskey, even at 55. But if you want to add some more water in there, a few drops, please do. It can hold it up really nicely.
So, question for you, Brett. Why wine casks? Why not the traditional sort of casks that everyone else is using at the moment?
Yeah, well, coming from the wine industry a little bit myself, I felt that was an area that hadn't been explored too much yet in Tasmanian whiskey at the time. The guys at Jules at Whisky and Ailment, I remember having a session with him in Melbourne on the Long Row Reds. He introduced me to Long Row Red, which for the most part is finishing casks. But I really loved what Long Row was doing in Campbelltown and that area. And where we had a slight advantage is because of our industry being so young, a lot of the coopers are able to recooper casks, which gives you the chance to toast and char with wine casks. Whereas in Scotland, the tradition tends to be wet fills, either as finishing and wet fills. And when we started exploring some of those wine casks from Scotland with our brokers for this independent release, that's what we tended to find. And some of the whiskies we were getting out from Isla were almost pink whiskies. And we realized that the production technique and process really made a big difference in it. But, it was one of those fortunate things that when we did this in 2015 the first time, yes, we decided to do toasting and heavy charring on our casks. And that gives us that color and that integration and that richness a lot more so than wet fill. So that was fun. That was a project. there were so many bourbon ports and sherries that were fantastic whiskies being made that we wanted our point of difference. And so that sort of became the mantra for Spirit Thief. And going forward, we wanted to commit to that and really explore that. What can we do with different oak and, well, with oak, but French versus American versus our toasting levels and red wine. So, yeah, we're committed at this stage to full maturations in red wine casks. We do have some bourbon down, but it is marrying stock in case some of our experiments get too dry, sort of in the same way that New Zealand first one that we tried did there as well. Yeah.
What's everyone think of number 2, whiskey number 2? It tastes as good as it smells. Makes sense of the smell and sweetness. Agree. Gilly asks, any botrytis casks on the horizon?
Do we have any botrytis?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yes.
We don't at this point. I'll let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. We are a company that is dedicated to ex-red wine maturations and what we can do for that over the next 10 years, and building a brand around that is something that I'm keen to do. But once a year for Tasmanian Whisky Week, we fill a 250-litre cask, and with that in mind, I'm happy to look at putting fortified casks down. So we do have 2 of those down over the last couple of years, but they won't be coming out until 2030 something. So we'll find out what Spirit Thief in a fortified casks tastes like in about a decade's time. Yeah, and so botrytis, yes, possibly we'll do a botrytis this year in 2021, but it won't be available for a while until we've established what we can do with our red wine maturations.
Awesome. And what was the age, sorry, on the first 2?
Yeah, cool. So the first one was 5.5 years for the New Zealands. The second one with the Sheen is 2.5 years in 20-litre casks. So you can see the racks behind me are 20-litre casks. So just to, Martin says, tell us about Sheen, please. Okay, yep, I'll get to that in just a second. But just to expand on it, going back to my wine roots, these wine casks for Sheen and some of these others come from a little winery in the Adelaide Hills called Main and Cherry Winery. A very good winemaker friend of mine when I was living in South Australia, and we worked together on a number of projects. So he's got a winery which I really respect, and he was able to source these casks. So if you go to a Cooper and just ask for red wine casks, and they're working usually with much larger wineries, they don't know the origins of what's been in those casks previously. It's just sort of given the generic sense of ex-red wine. So by us working with individual wineries and winemakers, we know the origins a little bit more. We can have a bit more control and engagement with that. So Michael Sexton is the winemaker for this. This was actually 2 300-litre French oak Grenache casks that we sourced from him in 2018.
Which winery was it, sorry?
It's called Main and Cherry. Yeah, you're from SA, yeah, Martin. Main and Cherry, just outside McLaren Vale. Yeah, and so they did a release as a Grenache back at that point, and so with our Coopers, we're able to really get 3 20-litre casks out of one typical 300-litre wine cask, and that's the way we work. So, Martin, these days for our American Oak Shiraz, we're working with Molly Duca, for instance. So, if anyone's familiar with Molly Duca Shiraz, big, bold, brassy American Oak Shiraz, and that's giving us some fantastic results there too.
Whiskey number 3. Should we
click
into it?
Number 3.
Well, so that's the Spirit Thief American Oak. For those, that's number 3. But I'll just go through. I think some good tasting notes. Whiskey in Isolation says the Sheen was boiled raspberry candies in white pepper hit. I totally agree, mate. That was.
Yep, you're getting that white pepper, which is great.
Awesome. But tell us about Spirit Thief. So not only are you doing independent bottling, but there's a I know where the Bond store is located right now, sort of underneath there's a stills upstairs, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, look, a little bit of context. So, for those that don't know, this is a copper spirit thief. Basically, it's what's used to go into a barrel to draw out your sample. And so, when we conceived of the independent bottling notion in 2015, we were working collaboratively with some of these other distilleries. It seemed like a really good sort of symbol to represent what the company was about and was doing. After those first couple of pilot casks were well received, we got the opportunity with some capital investors to scale and grow the business for the future. So Ian and Jared at that time were basically having their hands full. Jared was working for Belgrove Distillery as an assistant distiller, left and went to Hobart Brewing Company here as a national sales manager. And Ian had just opened Gold Bar in Hobart as well, which is a really great gin bar. And so if you guys are familiar with Gold Bar, Ian had spent some time in Sullivan's Cove prior to that as well. And so for us to grow and scale meant that we couldn't necessarily just, use the occasional stills at these other places to get continued stock. And having worked in the industry for about 5-6 years at that time, there was a project happening in the background that Casey Overeem was involved with on site where the Overeem distillery is now. So that project is basically white label distillery that was coming up as a contract distillery that had a really strong team behind it, including Anthony White, who's a distiller at Nance. He'd also spent some time at Belgrove. And Casey and Jane Overeem as well. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with Overeem. So we're all on site together. And so the wash for the whiskey, the beer wash, for both Overeem and Spirit Thief is all made here on this same premises, which also just happened to be the original Bond store for Lark way back in the day before Casey got involved and made it the Overeem one as well. So Casey's my landlord. He's always here and testing barrels with us and giving us some advice. He helped build some of our early racks. And that is sort of the future for Spirit Thief now. I'm up in the distillery every Monday, brewing and distilling and making our own spirit. We've got our own little still up there as well and manufacturer's license. And then this is one of 2 Bond stores here on site. So this allowed us to expand in a real way and have access to state-of-the-art equipment. The stills that we work on, Nap Lewis stills made here in Tasmania, and really, it's fantastic to have that sort of support around us whilst we build this company here as well.
And I can how many barrels? I think you're close to a big milestone very soon, right?
Yeah, 387 at the moment. Ollie, we just filled that the other day, another 10. We started off doing 20-litre casks last year, and then 50-litre casks as well. This was in order to be able to have continual flow. And now we just fill 100-litre casks or 120-litre casks, about 10 of those a month. So we're doing about 1,000 litres a month in spirit now, which in time, should see about 20 to 25,000 bottles a year from about 25, 26 onwards. So, so it's some exciting times, but in order to use the 20s, that allowed us to stay in market without being out of it for too long whilst we had the brand established. All right, so over to what we've got in the glass, number 3. Okay, guys, this is a work in progress. It's less than 2 years of age. But this is spirit from these stills here in Huntingfield. We're only 20 minutes south of Hobart. That was distilled in January 2019. I bottled this up for Ollie at the start of the year for you guys for this session. So I think it was the first week of January. So it'll be at least, a few more months probably middle of the year that we'll look to bring this out. But on the nose, we're really happy with where this is, has got to. This is at 48% as well. I should mention that. So our first two releases that we experimented with as our pilot cask was American Oak Shiraz and French Oak Tempranillo. So what we wanted to do this time around as part of our, really finding out what we can do with our casks and with our spirit is to get a combination of those two together and find out, where these differences lie. So this is an American Oak Tempranillo. So we wanted to know what's the wood contribute and what does the wine contribute. There will only be about 240 odd, perhaps 250 bottles of this that we do as these releases. But this was a really interesting chance for us to sort of play around in our very early days. It's some of the first barrels that we've laid down in this bond store.
Just to answer a quick question. So Scott goes, is due to visit Tassie. Basically, you can go north, east,
on Saturday.
or south. On the east, you've got Sullivan's Cove and Lark and Spring Bay. North, you've got Hobart. Distilleries is just north of Hobart on the way to Mona. Sheen, I believe, is next, then Old Kempton and Belgrove. And then south, heading down to Bridgewater, Huntington, where you're based, you've got Overeem, Tim Duckett's there of Heartwood and yourself. And I'm sure there's dozens of little ones that are popping up. I know Jack Lark's got a new distillery down there that he's consulting with as well. So that, there's plenty of research online, but jump online. There's plenty of distilleries down in Tassie. But please pop in to visit Jane and the Overeem crew and Brett from Spirit Thief when you're down there next time.
Yeah, it is a fabulous community. I see Zach's comment there as well when he came down to visit. It is amazingly supportive, having been in it for 7 years or so, and getting to work and visit these other distilleries with my tour company a couple of times a week to these different locations was just a fantastic training ground for it all.
Where is that multi popcorn coming from?
I don't know. That's an interesting tasting note. We might have to examine that a little bit further, but definitely this is where we can go back and look at it. So I can tell you that we have got in this racks behind us American Oak Shiraz, American Oak Tempranillo, French Oak Shiraz, and French Oak Tempranillo. And we put those down at the same time because with the same spirit batch, we really want to know, where are these differences between oak versus wine varietal from the same winery, from Maine and Cherry. So this will really help inform us, on some research that we couldn't really do until we, just got to the results ourselves there as well. But yeah, this replaces what was supposed to be our Ben Rinnes Bordeaux cask, which has unfortunately been held up due to COVID over in the UK. But I hope you guys are enjoying this as a bit of a work in progress preview. No one has tried this unless they've come to the bond store. So you're the first group that we get to share this with, really, along the way. And you can see between these two, this one and the Sheen, just how different they are. Yeah, still requires a little bit of time, a little bit spiritus in the end. Even in this last 6 weeks with some heat down here, this has come on a bit more since then as well. So by the end of this summer, in a few more months, I really think this will be coming along quite nicely.
Do you have a favorite ex-wine cask type that you like working with, or your palate gravitates towards, like the one you have to drink?
At this point, Ollie, we're still really working through that. Out of the two that we originally did, the American Oak Shiraz was very easy, very, very pleasant. It's a beautiful sessionable style whiskey. The French Oak Tempranillo on our first pilot casks, I would say, was a more up and down. It wasn't quite as refined, but geez, it had some interesting spice and flavor profiles from that French oak that we're really working with now. So I'm excited to explore what we can do with one specific style. So we won't do really single cask releases. We're not too focused on single cask, but we will batch from the same style of wines for these next few years. And then eventually we may end up doing some vintage releases like field blends where we might put some Grenache together with Tempranillos and bring those out. So we're really waiting to see what the spice rack, so to speak, holds behind us and how we can do this with different projects in the future.
Shall we jump onto whiskey number 4?
All right, we shall. I'm just reading Nadia's comment here. I feel like Tempranillo has been the least influential. The oak influence was there. Yeah, okay. Hard to be Armenian Tempranillo, perhaps that combination. This is what we're trying to work out, guys, is how much of the wood is influencing it versus the actual varietal that's in there, because we can tell from the bond store that there is a difference, and so we want to know exactly how can we use those for our whiskies in the future. All right, number 4. Okay, cool. So this is the first cask strength that Spirit Thief is releasing, and natural cask strength, I should say. So it's 63.5%. We made this with Pete up at Belgrove, which of course is famous as being a rye distillery. So this is
just to jump in, it's the French oak Belgrove, not the peated.
Yes.
That very big distinction, and you'll know at the end why. So the French oak, please.
Yeah. If you can smell peat on the glass, you've poured the wrong one. But French oak Mataro, yeah, is the one. Good distinction there, Ollie. All right. So yeah, for those familiar with Belgrove, Peter Bignell's amazing inventor, farmer, distiller, sand sculptor, and ice sculptor, all things wrapped up in one. And he's been a great mentor and friend to us over the years. So when we made this whiskey, we actually had the wash made at Last Rites Brewery in Cambridge, and then took that up to the distillery itself. So there's no peat in this, but this whiskey has been done on a still that is a direct flame charge. So instead of electrical elements, it's direct flame, which gives us some of this charring notes on the palate. So again, looking at what influence the spirit has from that distillery, we didn't want to cover that up too much. And it was exciting to be able to do a cask strength release with this Mataro here.
Got a really good question from Whiskey in Isolation. He says, interesting that you were just pure wine cask. Is it pretty hard to work with? Is kind of the feedback from other people. What about, is it your wine background? What's drawing you towards the wine casks?
Yeah, there is a perception out there that wine casks can be very difficult to work with, can get dry, can get very tannic along the way. And that's why we do have bourbons down, if that is the case as well. But from our research and what we found out is the reason why is because wine casks are usually getting filled as wet fill. So there's no retoasting and recharring and integration of the spirit necessarily into the wood that's gone on. And so that was part of those pilot casks to find out, does this actually work as a full maturation over 3 summers in 20-litre casks? Does it get too dry, etc.? And we were pleasantly surprised with the result that gave us confidence to keep going in this direction. We could have opted to do the ports and the sherries, but there are so many distilleries that are doing that exceptionally well that we really wanted to explore what we could learn from the wine industry and bring it into single malts and have fun. And luckily, the directors and the investors believe in that vision for the company as well. So that's what's exciting for me. We are always talking to winemakers around what it is that they've learned with using oak in the wine industry as well. And so, not only on the varietals, and on the oak. So we're now looking at Burgundy versus Bordeaux, oak, for instance, and how do we get some differentiations between those styles as well, because a lot of this is understood in the wine industry, but it has sort of been glazed over a little bit in single malt, at least in the Tasmanian industry to date. So that's one of the reasons. It's a bit of a journey. We don't expect that everything is going to work for us, but that's kind of the exciting part of it, I hope.
I personally love the fact that you're trying something different. There's so many, there's 300 Aussie distilleries now, 80 different have product in market. And we're seeing, yes, there are some wonderful Tawny Cask, Apera, we're getting the mix, but, few experimenting, especially at the scale that you're doing, and you're going head first. So, you're carving out a nice niche in the market, and the flavors are just, dominating with, but balancing also with the spirit, which is really interesting. That's kind of the big highlight, that these first few of you're getting a good mix at least. So I'm really excited to see what's next.
Yeah, great. Well, that is the aim, to definitely get a balanced, sessionable style of whiskey that is an integration of the spirit with the cask, that isn't overwhelmed by those fortified port flavors that has sort of dominated our industry for quite a while. So if we can find a little bit of balance and softness and elegance to these whiskies, that's the hope there as well, Ollie. So that's good. Belgrove, I'm glad you guys can still pick up the Belgrove. The question, given that the wash is made elsewhere, comes down to the still, and so direct flame still plays a big part of that. Springbank, that's direct flame fired there as well. It's the Malo effect that happens from charring on the bottom of the still comes through into the spirit and stays with it. So we definitely didn't want to, hide the origins of the spirit.
Last time I was down there, Peter mentioned he gets a lot of requests from, other blenders, other distillers for ad hoc stuff. And he says he doesn't clean his stills ever. He says, look, this is my still, this is what I do. If you're going to interrupt me and do your own stuff, I'm not going to clean it. It's going to have residue from the previous run in it. Tough luck, good luck to you. That's what I do. And that's his attitude to life. He just keeps going. It's just continuously turning and churning over there, which I think that also hopefully you're getting a bit of the previous rye distillations probably coming through, to answer your question, Michael.
Yeah, possibly. We've got 2 Belgrove in the mix here, so you'll pick up some of that character along the way. Cask strength. Look, it's an interesting one. As an independent bottler, people expect you to be releasing cask strengths, and it was one of the feedbacks that we got on these first releases, back in 2018, from the real whiskey aficionados. They're like, when are you guys doing a cask strength? And so, it's been fun to do it. Is that where these whiskies, for the style that Spirit Thief wants to create, is best represented? All of this is exploration for us. I really love that 48%. I think for wine casks has a really sessionable, great balance. So if these cask strengths are a bit rich for you guys, please add some water, because they can definitely carry it. You'll get that opening of the nose, and you'll actually get a further expansion of these flavors going on there as well. But this Mataro, look, to go back to the toasting notes just for a minute on this Mataro, for me, there's fruit on this, there's charring, but there's also charred vegetables. And what I love about this whiskey is it reminds me of being in Greece a couple of years ago, when we would have charred octopus sitting out there and vegetables in the middle of the afternoon. It is not necessarily fruit forward in the same way that some of these other ones are. There's a nice charring that's coming from the Belgrove, but it's also coming from this cask influence, I think. So for me, this is a really interesting, fascinating one, and I particularly have a soft spot for this whiskey. But I'll be interested to see at the end of this session how everyone else is going with these.
I love the mix of tasting notes. Nadia's saying brekkie cooked on the campfire, while Chris is saying apple pie with cloves. Like, 2 completely, it just shows you how personal whiskey is to everyone.
All right. Cool.
I've
Well,
got a quick question. Someone's direct
yeah,
messaged me, Jack. He goes, what's the rough relationship between barrel size and maturation for you guys? You know, are larger or less active casks being laid down, longer aging in time? Because you mentioned you mixed with 20s at the beginning. What's kind of the story there?
yeah. So this bond store that we're in, I'll lift up. I'll just show you guys the roof. So we're not like the Lark Distillery bond store, which is a tin shed out in the middle of the field, which gets super hot during the day. We've got a more consistent sort of approach here. So it's concrete walls and floor behind me. If you can see our hundreds there. So we found over these couple of years, and summer in particular, we do have a balanced consistency. We're on the same side as where Overeem's maturing. They're underground, we're above ground. And that's been beneficial for our 20-litre casks. We have temperature gauges in here and humidity. We do fluctuate about 9 degrees from the top of the bond store at the hottest point back on the back wall to the coolest point. So we think our 20s in here are 2.5 years, our 50s 3.5 years, and our hundreds will be 5.5 years. But that's that's yet to be determined. So at least 3 summers for our 20s is the way we look at it, which is a good way to approach it.
Michael asks, do you do tours, tastings, or best way to reach out just through Facebook or the website, right, and see if you're around? Or
yeah, guys, we do in short as of this year. It's by appointment. We're on site here with Overeem and White Label as well. So we're actually in the stage of just putting that experience together between the 3 distilleries, because it's a really great experience. But if you are coming down here, shoot myself an email. It's just on the website, or you can call my mobile. We can do it. It's just a matter of lining up timing. So weekends are a little bit tricky, but during the week we can usually make it work. We do have a cellar door operational. We're trying to tidy that up a little bit, so it's a little rough and ready. It's in our production office, but if you come down, we'll definitely give you some tastings using the Spirit Thief here out of some of these barrels behind us, and we've got bottles for sale on site. So yes, get in touch if you're coming down. We are available for tours. It's just not official at this stage, but it probably will be later in the year.
And Brad, if I'm not mistaken, you and Jane set up the first Tassie Whiskey Week, right?
Yeah, that's right. Back in 2015, Jane and I were the co-curators of Tasmanian Whiskey Week. And that was fantastic. And one of the things that we sort of laid down at the point of that as well was we wanted to create events where you could be up close and personal with those distillers. It was one thing to go and visit them on site and have an experience in their distillery, but we wanted to create some events where you could go to restaurants, you could go to cafes, even events on site, and actually drink and talk with them there in person, as if you were going with a friend out to a bar. So that was a really fun one to do in 2015. I think it's 5 years in now, Tas Whiskey Week, and it keeps growing, and the community down here is really rich and strong. Jane and I have both got young kids of our own now, so we had to step back from those curatorial roles in the early days. But it's been fantastic to work with Jane over the years, and now be neighbours on the same side is great. Tas Whiskey Week. Thanks, Ollie. I didn't even know that. 9th to 15th of August.
I spoke to Christy yesterday, so she gave me the heads up.
Yeah, cool. So that's good. Dan Hooper. All right, Dan mentions Vanguard. Guys, we've got a mailing list on our website, and it's called the Vanguard Club. Special benefits. Yes, there are special benefits involved. I don't 100% know what they are yet. We're working through it as we go, but essentially, first access to bottles. I think in time we'll have Vanguard only releases, which would be fun. We've kind of capped it to 1,000 Vanguard members to start off with, and we've allocated about 600 of those so far. So if anyone's interested and wants to follow what's happening with us, jump on the website and have a look at Vanguard. We'll do some cool stuff along the way. Yeah.
Let's jump in whiskey number 5.
Yeah, all right. Whiskey number 5. Okay. So this is the American Oak Shiraz, heavily charred, Adams Distillery. It says 64.1, but guys, it's actually 63.5. Not that you can really tell the difference, but it's 63.5 on there when we pulled it out and married these casks together. So first thing we should probably do is acknowledge the fire that took place at Adams Distillery just over a week ago. So a bit of a tragedy up there. Poor Greg, who was the worker at the time, suffered some serious burns and is still, recovering from those. And the distillery itself suffered $1.5 to $2 million damage. So if anyone wasn't familiar with that, that's a pretty big news story, particularly around Tasmania, but nationwide there as well. But prior to this, in 2018, the Adams Distillery boys were really excited about what we could do around it. So because our first release had been a straight American Oak Shiraz from the Redlands Distillery, this was a chance for us to see how far we could take the charring and the toasting. So again, there's no peat in this. Adams Distillery guys on a direct flame as well, the same way Belgrove is. But if you're picking up more of this charring, it's from that integration of that wood. It's not what we would call an alligator, but it's going pretty close to it, if you're familiar with the alligator char. So on the nose, really lovely, rich vanilla and cinnamon and what I call cassia bark kind of flavors there as well. It's true, the oily spirit of the Adams boys. Adams have won numerous awards over the years. At this time, they'd only just brought out, I don't even know if they had actually brought out their first whiskies back in about September 2018. I think it was still their gins and everything. But in terms of being the new kids on the block, their new make spirit was really interesting and exciting. They use roasted malts rather than just the typical crystal malt. And they use brewer's yeast rather than just the straight M1 distiller's yeast on this as well. So no bourbon, but a lot of that, what we'd be familiar with, vanilla and bourbon element coming through from this American oak. And it's a really lovely one at 63.5. It still holds its own and can go with water there as well. Dan, yeah, that's awesome. Good. Yeah, so I'm interested to see what you guys are liking with this. This one and the Mataro officially come out tomorrow. So there's 220 bottles of each of these because it's cask strength. Of course, there's a few less bottles. But if you like this, jump on it before it goes live tomorrow.
Loving these comments that are coming in. You've got a maple syrup, nice and spicy, banging. That's awesome. This was my choice by Gavin. Very good. Michael says, not overpowered by the red wine. Perfect balance. What's the age on this one? Zach asks.
2.5 years on these as well. The only difference is these are 225 litre American oak Shiraz casks from the wine industry. So the wine industry, if they're going to use American oak, tends to be 225s, and French oak tends to be 300. But from each of those, you'll get 3 20-litre casks from the coopers. These were all coopered, incidentally, if anyone's interested, at SA Cooperage. At the time, Tasmanian Cask Company did not have the equipment to make more than 1 20-litre cask. So as a bizarre side note, when we originally did it, that's all we thought we could get was 1 20-litre cask. So the original releases, when we came up with the concept, was only going to be 1 20-litre American oak Shiraz and 1 20-litre French oak Tempranillo. But before we knew it, we had 6 casks coming across Bass Strait to us, and we thought, we better fill them up. And our initial investment was 300% over what we'd budgeted. So that is the reason Spirit Thief exists today. A funny mistake that has now born into a business. Tasmolshan, how are you, man? You've been a good supporter of Spirit Thief across the years. Yeah, we were really happy that this can hold its own as a cask strength, and is very different to the other American oak Shiraz we did. A lot of that comes down to the Adams mash and spirit, but also there is, we believe, some of the charring difference here as well.
I do like that you can taste the Adams in this as well. Like
you can't you?
It's a different beast to some of their other releases, but it's got that dirtiness that I like. It's coming through.
Hey, it's an interesting thing that is one of the benefits and goes to this question around wine cask as well. Is sometimes with heavier pairers, the sherries or the ports, it tends to mask the character of the new make spirit. Whereas with these red wine experiments, and remember, this still is an exploration series. We didn't know, but I think that's been one of the nice things to come out of it, is that the new make character of the distillery is still relevant. It's still viable.
Just going to do a quick time check. I know there's some more questions coming through. We'll get to them shortly. I said we'll try and stick to 50 minutes to an hour, so we're getting close there. Let's jump into the sixth whiskey for tonight, and we'll get to those questions during.
Yeah, cool. All right. So this one is another Belgrove distillery. It's the Coastal Peated French Oak Cabernet from Belgrove. It's our last tasting for tonight. I always preface this whiskey by saying it's super divisive. Some people are going to absolutely loathe this whiskey, and some people are going to perhaps think it's the best one out of the lot. So this was done in April 2018. At the time, we had our second fill casks. So the only way we were going to use second fill casks was if we were going to do peated. The only place to go and do peated, really, where we could get access was, of course, up at Belgrove. So we said to Pete, what can we do? This is from the coast. It's from his brother's farm where the peat's been dug up. So this is a steam train wreck in some ways.
Can I just say I switched to gallery mode to see everyone's reactions, and some people are like, other people are like, this is...
like a darky, yeah. What do we have the other day from the media guys? What was it? Brasso. Who was it? Matt Wooler from Dram Nation was talking about this being Brasso. Look, to me, this was always a peanut brittle. So I should say the last summer, after having second fill casks, it spent an entire 10 months in a French oak Cabernet Sauvignon as finishing. I really wanted to drive some of the fruit back into this, so that it wasn't just about the peat and the oak. But one interesting thing for those that are interested in the tech side of things is that this was peat smoked post gristing. So normally, if you smoke grain, it's done before you grist it up and you cut it up. But in order to increase the peat level, the ppm, Peter Bignell came up with a concept by gristing in advance. You get more surface area peat coverage on that barley, on that grain. So we did that into a big sort of tub, and then stuck the hose with the smoke right at the bottom of that tub, and then smoked it for about 8 hours. And we had the ppm measured on this over in Sweden, and the post-spirit ppm is at about 47 ppm. But if it had been done on the grain in the same way that they do other ppm measures for Scotch whiskey, then we believe it's probably up around about 110. So, it's a decent... so
optimal levels?
Optimal levels. But, hey, you can't say I didn't warn you. This is a divisive whiskey. Burning tires is not an uncommon response to it.
I'm just going to ask the group, put your, whoever's got their camera on, thumbs up if you like it, thumbs down if you don't like it. There
Oh,
we
yeah, it's
go.
50-50.
Nadia,
Nadia's in between. Terrible from Gilly. Yeah.
Looks like look, I saw one here. Geez, that's hot. Corey, we ruined your dinner, mate. I'm sorry.
Chris,
In a good way, in a good way. Okay.
Yeah. So look, I'm glad it's the last one that we do for everyone. We had this on tasting at Tas Whisky Week last year as well. And there are some aficionados that go nuts for it. You can guarantee it's not like a whiskey that you've come across every day. It's almost completely sold out. We've only got 25 bottles of this left. So if anyone is a fan and likes it, jump on the Whiskey List app after this and grab a bottle off Ollie or from us. But yeah, will we do it again? Probably not. But geez, it's been fun to do this peated version of it along the way.
Awesome. Well, if there's any other questions, please send it through. That kind of finishes the formality of tonight's tasting. Thank you, Brett, and everyone sort of for joining. These bottles are available to buy right now. So download, if you haven't already, the Whiskey List apps. It's on iOS and Android. Just search Whiskey List. You don't need the THA at the beginning in the app stores. Jump on, click on Drinks with Spirit Thief, navigate down into the bottle you like, hit buy. There's only 4 bottles available to buy now, which is the first one we tried, the New Zealand Pinot, the fourth one, Belgrove French Oak, the fifth one, Adams American Oak, and then the last one you've just tried now, the Belgrove Peated. So those 4 are available. Unfortunately, the second one's all gone, and the work in progress, it's not yet whiskey, so not yet for sale. And then hopefully, June, we're expecting the Ben Rinus, your other bottle as part of this exploration series to land in Australia, right, Brett?
Yeah, that's right. That's the best details we've got at the moment. So the Ben Rinus is from Bordeaux cask. It's 11 years of age. It's a really fantastic whiskey. The tasting panel, which included Brooke from Whiskey and Ailment and Alex from Dark Valley and some of the other guys on it, are really excited by it, as am I. And that sort of rounds out our exploration series for this first lot. And yeah, given the state of the world, June is when we expect to get it in May and get it out to you guys in June. But if anyone wants to pre-order, join the Vanguard Club and you can secure one of those bottles.
And we're recording the session today, so if you want to watch it again later, what I'll do, hopefully later tonight, if not first thing tomorrow, I'll send it an email to everyone with the link to purchase as well. And we'll get that out to everyone before the general public sales starts tomorrow as well. So if there's anyone who wants to sleep on it and then wake up in the morning, if you haven't decided, actually, no, I want to go back and get whiskey number 1, they'll be available still tomorrow morning to purchase before the general public sale.
Guys, we should say all of these bottles are at the same price as well. So it's $185. They're all 500 ml. It's the same price between cask strength and the regular strength. Some of them have involved more work than others, but we were really keen not to favor one or the other over pricing on these exploration series. So yeah, that's how we've just gone about it for these 6 bottlings. I hope you've enjoyed it. The thing for me, which I hope people have taken away from tonight, is that red wine casks have had a bad reputation in the past as being dry, tannic, finished. The majority of these have been full maturations in red wine casks. And so I hope that's sort of brought a new angle to what can really be done with whiskey in this direction.
I've just put up a poll for the group. I'm always curious to see what the favorite whiskey of tonight is. So if you've got a couple seconds, jump on and vote for your favorite. I forgot to mention any order through us over $200 gets free shipping automatically. So yeah, if anyone who grabs 2 bottles, they'll chipped in free shipping there. And yeah, support this wonderful Tassie producer Brett here. I can see that the current favorite at the moment is, I'm quite surprised. I was actually thinking a different one, but I'll give it 10 more seconds. I'll end the poll and then we can see what the results are.
Yeah, I'm keen to find out as well, because it's been an interesting journey along the way. But this is the first time we've really had all 5 of these going head to head, apart from the PR media tasting we did last week. So yeah, it's exciting to see what you guys think of it along the way. If there's any questions that we've skipped over that what needs to be asked, feel free to chuck them in the chat there. I'm happy to stay on and address anything for a few more minutes there as well after this.
All right, let's check out the results. Whiskey number 5, the Adams.
Cool. Yeah.
It's always tricky because
people get the vote, though. That's good.
People are like, oh, I want to vote for multiples as my favorites, but if you only have to choose one, it's good to see. Whiskey number 2, the Sheen, close 32% voted there, and then what we got next, equal between number 1 and number 4 as third place. There you go. Yeah,
that's great. I'm going to get a little screenshot of that, Ollie, before I know you'll video, but that's interesting for us to have a look at. Yeah, number 2, the French Oak Grenache Sheen, was beautifully balanced whiskey that was snapped up by the trade and our Vanguard club here as well. But rest assured, we'll have some more French Oak Grenache coming out next year. The future for us returns to American Oak Shiraz and French Oak Tempranillo in the middle of this year as our own core release products. We've got some great Cabernets laid down here as well, and we will use a little bit of bourbon, as I said, to create some of these differentiators on 1 or 2 of these releases. But ideally, we can work with full red wine maturations and do them justice.
Sorry, it was muted. Whiskey in Isolation asks, who won the competition? Officially, it ends at midnight tonight, entries. So we'll be drawing it tomorrow morning. But everyone who purchased a ticket for tonight got 1,000 bonus entries. So hopefully, someone from this tasting's in a much more bigger chance than the general public who's been entering there. But really good. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's just on the Whisky List Facebook page or through our Instagram. Little competition, jump on it. You got the chance to win all 6 bottles in one amazing pack that Brett's put together from the exploration series here at Spirit Thief. So if you haven't yet entered, don't worry. If you've attended the tasting, you've got 1,000 entries automatically added from your ticket, so you're in for a good chance. But we'll announce it tomorrow morning on our Facebook.
Fantastic, and thank you, Ollie, and to Chris and David from the Whisky List for putting this session on for us. It's been fantastic to always talk to new audiences and see you guys here tonight, and hopefully introduce Spirit Thief to some people that have never heard of it before. Jump on and follow us and see what's happening in the future. We're excited, and come and see us if you're in Tasmania.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I've got a couple of questions just coming here if anyone wants to stay on the line. Brett, Dan asks, are you seeing variances in between the 3 recoopered 20-litre casks, given they've had the same origin?
Yeah, not really. Not in the same way that you do in other distilleries across varied casks. Because when you deal with a cooperage, it's not even the same staves that necessarily go in. If you place an order for a port cask, those staves aren't necessarily coming from one barrel and being recoopered into another. They can come from 50 different casks and possibly even different port producers. But because we work with the wineries themselves, we know that those casks and those staves are going directly back in. So no, we're finding a very strong consistency even at this early stage from barrel to barrel. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're out of the same vintage, the same winery, and the same treatment.
Any other questions? No, it looks like we've got a few comments.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, just scrolling through the chat. Everyone's commenting on the chat. Zoom just pushes it back. Courtney says, have to say number 2 was my favorite that she voted for, but added a little water to the atoms and it was magic. I definitely agree. If you can lower that ABV just a little bit and the flavor profile of the casks really stand out.
Can I pose a question for those who've got videos, thumbs up or down? Who wants to see future releases as cask strength rather than 48%? Yeah, all right. Yep. So, yeah, about 50-50. Well, we better do both then, right? And yeah.
Awesome.
Always cask strength. Yeah, cool.
And I think, Corey, you might have some people turning up soon. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we're a little bit over time, but looks lots of happy faces. We've Whiskey List has got plenty of tastings on throughout the year. We've got Millstone, Milk and Honey tickets for sale still. We've got Whiskey Lovers Australia, our Facebook group, 10K tasting. We've got the new Glendronach 18s in there, the Ardbeg 19-year-old batch 2s in there, and a bunch of others. So yeah, there's a few tickets still. And I see some familiar faces we'll see in the next few weeks. But yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. We'll see you at the next tasting. And yeah, please support Spirit Thief. We'll send through the email shortly with the recording and the links to purchase. Otherwise, jump on the Whiskey List app, iOS and Android stores. And yeah, purchase the bottles that you like tonight. Thanks, everyone, for your support. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Might just stay on for a second, Brett.
Cool.